What's up guys, Matt from the Upland Experience by Final Rise. Want to do a quick video and answer a lot of questions that we get very frequently on, hey, what's a good field gun? A lot of folks reaching out, you know, there's a lot of great companies out there, a lot of great manufacturers. I've probably owned more shotguns than I should in my short life here, but I wanted to share some of my personal input on what I believe makes a good field gun and a couple of the things that you kind of want to go through. I think the first question that people have is, what gauge do I get? Do I get a 12 gauge, 16, 20, 28, 410? If it's me, at the end of the day, I think the most versatile gauge out there is a 20 gauge. As far as being able to go to really probably any good sporting goods store, be able to find good loads, whether that's for upland hunting or waterfowling, the 20 gauge really just has the right amount of payload. The scale of the gun isn't very big. You know, I feel like when I'm holding a 12 gauge, I'm holding a 2x4, and you get down into these 20s and 28s. In my hands personally, I just feel they're just a little bit more sporty, which is my personal preference. I'm sure there's a lot of people that probably might disagree with that, but I do believe that the 20 gauge is the most versatile all-around gauge. You can shoot anything with it. And then the factory availability of ammunition is one thing to consider. That being said, I do own a lot of 28 gauges. I hunt over pointing dogs. Got the hounds in their boxes right here. They're kind of crying at me a little bit. We just got done hunting bluegrass up here in Utah, and they're getting tired of listening to me talk. They want to go home. But the 28 gauge to me, it has been an awesome gauge because I do reload. A lot of factory standard loads that are coming out of a 28 gauge or 3/4 ounce. You can find 1 ounce loads, but being able to reload, I've been able to really tune my guns. I like spending a lot of time at the range. I like shooting, I like practicing all that stuff. And so I've dialed in a handful of loads that work well for me. We do have some hand loading information on the channel that you guys can check out as well. But yeah, to not be overly long-winded, because I'm known to do that, a 20 gauge would be my first choice as far as just all-around versatility. If I could only own one gauge, that's what it would be. But my personal preference is the 28 because I do reload. Moving on, there's a lot of different things that make up a good gun, a good field gun specifically. And when I say field gun, I'm talking about a gun that I don't have a problem going out and beating up on. Now, I do have some nice guns here, a couple side-by-sides from Upland Gun Company. I don't have any, classic double guns by any means, but I don't own guns that I won't hunt with. I don't have safe queens. That's just not my thing. If I own it, I'm gonna hunt with it. And so a field gun to me is just a good all-around gun that has a good finish, good components, functions as it should, and I'm gonna be able to go out and hunt and just, if I put a scratch on it, whoop-de-doo, is what it is. A gun's a tool. Take care of them, but crap happens, and that's just the nature of it. So the weight of the gun to me is something that is often overlooked. We carrying a light gun all day is very nice. You go on giant hikes through these mountains, or we're chucker hunting, we're covering 10, 12, 14 miles in a day. A light gun is nice, but there's pros and cons to everything. And I feel like too light of a gun, anything below 6 pounds, it's kind of beyond that point of diminishing returns. The guns become too whippy in certain applications now. If you're hunting quail, grouse in tight cover, woodcock, different things where it's definitely more point and shoot, there's not a lot of follow through or swinging through of your shot, those light guns are great. I was hunting with this little 28 gauge Venus from Upland Gun Company today. It's snappy shooting. You're in the pine trees. It worked out great. I shot it well, but I do not shoot this gun very well chucker hunting. I still shoot birds, but if they're further shots, those 40, 50 yard shots, I just don't shoot that gun as well. I'm swinging through them too quick, and the gun doesn't settle down fast enough as I'm pulling the trigger. And so what I've found for my personal preference, anything that's above 6 pounds, 6 to 6.5 pounds, I feel like is a really, really good weight. This particular gun is right in that range. This is a Browning Satori super light. Very, very nice gun. I shoot this gun incredibly well. One of my favorite guns. This is a Franke Instinct L in a 20 gauge as well. This is actually the gun that I waterfowl hunt with. Usually that third shot in the semi-autos because I missed the first 2 times, so I just limit myself. That's why I've got these chokes in here. But these are both just fantastic guns. You know, nothing overly fancy by any means. You know, the Browning Satori is definitely a classic Upland gun. They're well built. They go bang when you pull the trigger. I've never had an issue with the Satori. And then these Franke Instincts, for the money off the shelf. A lot of people that reach out and say, hey, I want to get a good side-by-side, what would you go with? These Franke Instincts, the L specifically, because of the weight, the SL is the super light, and they're like incredibly light. I haven't had a good experience with that particular gun. But the Instinct L, you know, this gun's just over 6 pounds, shoots incredibly well. I do like the Prince of Well grips. We'll talk about grips here in a minute, but this gun fits me very well. The only downside is that the stock's essentially bent or cast for a right-handed shooter. So if you're a left-handed shooter, most of these guns aren't gonna, or this particular gun from Franke isn't going to work from you. You can see how that's canted to sit in your shoulder pocket a little bit differently, mount a little bit easier. So, and then this is also 20 gauge as well. This is from Upland Gun Company. This is a very basic Venus for them. Coin finish, double triggers, short tang, nothing super crazy, but just a fantastic gun that I've really enjoyed. And like I said, this is a light whippy gun, great in this application. I don't know if we caught any of the birds we shot today on video, but maybe we'll show that here. So weight-wise, 6 to 6.5 pounds. That's really my personal recommendation on a gun that's going to be good in every type of upland hunting application. Next thing to talk about, beads. I feel like that's one thing that a lot of guys get caught up in. In fact, this particular gun, I took the bead off of. We do a lot of field hunting, so we're shooting honkers and ducks point blank, and a lot of waterfowl guns. A lot of Benellis and Frankes are coming standard with a fiber optic, a red fiber optic. You're not supposed to be looking at the bead, so to me, I just don't want anything that can even potentially distract me. So between, you know, brass beads, there's the white ones. I mean, there's a whole different array of them. The most minimal front bead, in my opinion, is best. I really like the bead on the front of this Satori. Fantastic little, I mean, this gun, as far as the field gun goes, this is probably my personal favorite of all the guns that I own. So yeah, the bead's one thing to consider. I see a lot of times, I see guys that have, you know, giant long 4-inch fiber optics on there, and you're not supposed to aim a shotgun, and you know, to each their own. I'm sure some people will disagree, but I just feel the most minimal thing there. Focus on the bird, shoot the bird. I don't want anything that could potentially distract my eye as, you know, I'm instinctively mounting the gun and swinging on the bird. So no bead or brass bead. That's kind of that's my main takeaway. Talk about recoil pads. Lots of different options out there, and I've played around with a handful of things. Obviously, the most important thing, and I probably should have led with this, is does the gun fit you? The best gun for you is the gun that's going to fit you. And length of pull is a term that you hear often when it comes to gun fitments. If you don't have the chance to go and be fitted, most guns are in that 13.5 to 14-ish, give or take. A good way to kind of just know, because everybody's arms are different. One of the things I guess I kind of learned, and maybe it's more of a redneck way to just know if a gun's going to fit you, but you can take the gun and put it into basically on the inside of your arm by your elbow and reach up and see where your finger aligns on the trigger. And if I do it from this side, maybe I'll have to turn around this side for Garrett here, who's got the camera. My finger's right about there, which is where I want my finger to be on a trigger. I don't want it to be all the way through. I don't want it to be all the way on the fingertip. Right in the middle of that pad's kind of the sweet spot. So for me, if I go and do that, you know, based on the length of my arms, I know that these guns are going to fit me fairly well, or they're going to be close enough that I can shoot them well. I own a lot of Brownings for that reason, just because the guns just straight up miss me or fit me. This just has the hard plastic buttstock on it. I do like this, especially for late season applications. One of the things you run into with some of these rubber pads is that they'll snag on your clothing. As the season's progressing, you know, you start wearing coats and jackets or different things like that. So you're basically changing your length of pull, right? And if you don't practice mounting your gun a lot, or if maybe, you know, a million things can happen, but a lot of guys, as they're coming up, they can get caught on a jacket here. If you're familiar with the Final Rise vest, that's one of the reasons we don't use any padding in our shoulder harness. One, because you don't need it because we've got a great waist belt and suspension system, but two, it's going to change the way that you mount your gun. So if you go through a process of, you know, getting a custom gun, you're getting fitted for it, the length of pull, everything is set up to you, and then you start throwing layers on, and then you're wearing a vest that has thick shoulder pads, different things like that. Now all of a sudden that gun doesn't fit you. So what was all of that for? And so being able to mitigate that and making sure that that gun continues to fit you as you progress throughout the season is one thing that kind of works, that has worked well for me and something to strongly consider. Another thing, even for me later season, I do shoot a lot of these hard butt stocks later in the year. I've got a couple other Brownings that I like shooting. They are a little bit shorter in the length of pull, and I actually like that because a lot of times we're shooting downhill. So if you're an archer or anything like that, you know when you draw your bow back, you're supposed to bend at the hips, right? Because you can change your draw length. Well, your length of pull changes the same way, whether I'm shouldering a gun here or I'm aiming down. Not every shot is perfectly straight out in front of me. And so chucker hunting, a lot of times we're shooting down at the birds, and if that gun's too long, it can really just screw up your mount. So if you're doing a lot of mountain hunting, I would err on the side of being just a hair shorter to accommodate those angle shots, and then obviously the potential of layering. We're starting to get snow here, we're gonna have hoodies on, so just things to consider and think through. Another thing to talk about here is barrel length. Barrel length is obviously going to impact the overall gun weight, and like I talked about, for me, that 6 to 6.5 pound is really kind of the sweet spot. But you run into some of these lighter weight guns. For example, this 28 gauge has 29-inch barrels on it, and it's still very, very light because it's a true scale 28 gauge gun. Now you hop up to this other Upland gun company, Venus. This has 30-inch barrels on it. And so just because the gun is so slimmed down, the side-by-side, everything in general is a lot slimmer throughout these. A lot of it has to do with the foregrip. You know, these just have very basic splinter foregrips. This has like a full swell. I can't remember the exact name, Schneebel or whatever it is for that grip. But anyways, you know, there's give and take on materials, right? So I've always gone with at least a 28-inch barrel. That's what fits best for me. If I was a little bit smaller, if I was a youth or a gal, you know, 26 inches is great. I do own guns that have 26-inch barrels. I just really don't shoot them a lot because they're a little bit shorter, and I feel like the sight picture I get with a 28-inch barrel on some of those longer shots is a little more optimal. It kind of induces a little bit more lead naturally. Grip. Let's talk about grip and grip types. You can probably notice from the 3 guns that are sitting here, I am pretty partial to an English grip. One, I like the way that it looks, but I also like how it feels in my hand. On double guns, obviously it makes perfect sense. I need to be able to slide my hand, move from the front trigger into the back trigger so my hand can slide down the grip. But I even like it on my single trigger guns just because I can get it up very quickly. I do feel like it shoulders very fast. I also like a Prince of Wales grip, which is what you see here on this particular gun. Kind of a happy medium, right? It's got a little bit of a swell, so if I pull into the gun, that's great. But those particular grips for me work fantastic. If I'm shooting more of like a target discipline, yeah, a pistol grip works great. But for me, carrying a pistol grip gun in the field, it's just not my jam. I just don't personally enjoy it. So there's all sorts of types of grips out there, but I definitely err towards a Prince of Wales style grip or an English style grip for my field gun preferences. Another big question, and this is one that I went through when I was getting these 2 particular guns built, is ejectors or extractors. I think a lot of people don't like ejectors because it can spit the shells out. They could lose the shells. They don't want to litter. They want to, you know, be a good steward of the land. I like ejectors because I can get them out of my gun very quickly. I can just break the action, I catch them in my hand, and I'm able to reload a lot quicker. I like shooting double guns, but if I walk into a popcorn covey of birds and I get 2 shots off, if there's more birds getting up, by golly, I'm trying to reload and maybe get one more out of the group if I can. Extractors are just a little bit slower for that exact reason, and maybe that's a good thing to temper yourself with the extractors, but going back and forth, there's plenty of times when I go from shooting an extractor gun, which both of these guns are, to ejectors, there's a lot of times I forget that they eject and boop, there go my shells. So I really think that's a personal preference. I personally like the ejectors. I'm very, very used to them, and it's just nice to be able to pop them out. I feel like I can reload my gun quicker, and I'm not losing holes or anything like that or littering. So if I have to pick between the two, I'll obviously go with ejectors. Now, when it does come to building some of these custom guns like Upland Gun Company does, it does cost more to be able to get the ejectors. So that was one of the reasons I went with the extractors. But all in all, I shoot both of them fine. There's nothing wrong with being a little bit slow on the reload, but ejectors win my vote on this one. All right, so in summary, what makes a good field gun, and kind of what are my main hopes for a takeaway for you guys? First off, I think if you're gonna just buy one gun that you want to do everything with, from all of your upland hunting to waterfowling, target shooting, whatever, I would highly recommend going with the 20 gauge. You're going to be able to shoot ample payloads. You're going to have obviously great lethality. You've got great shot selection in that, 2 3/4 up to 3-inch shells. There's just a ton of versatility in that particular gauge, and so I think the 20 gauge, in my opinion, wins best vote on what's the best gauge for a field gun. What brand? You know, I think there's a lot of fantastic brands out there. I own a lot of Brownings. Brownings here in my home state of Utah, so I naturally a little bit of a buckmark guy, but I've had great experiences. These Franke Instincts, I think for the money, you know, they're around that $1,100 mark, brand new off the shelf from a lot of the stores. That's a ton of gun for the money. And I've never had an issue with it. I own multiple of these in other gauges as well. I have a 28 also. And so Franke, I think, is making some great guns. Like I said, this is my waterfowl gun. So it's been through hell and back, and I still use it chucker hunting as well. So big vote on the Frankes. Browning, very nostalgic brand. And then if you're into kind of more of the custom side of things, Upland Gun Company is doing an incredible job offering these custom guns at a very, very nice price point. I think the experience that they offer is really unmatched from any other manufacturers out there. You can have a fitting, you get to select the wood, and you can go through the whole process. I mean, this particular gun has the finalized feather on the receiver. It's got it on the barrel release. Like, you can put your dog on it. Like, they're just doing some really cool personalized stuff that make these guns special to a lot of people. So I own all these guns because I like all these guns. And from Browning, Franke, and Upland Gun Company, I think those are great brands to consider in your purchasing process. And big takeaway on weight, 6 to 6.5 pounds. I find that, you know, I'm going to combine barrel weight, or barrel length, excuse me, and weight kind of into one summary. The longer barrels are going to have a little bit heavier gun. To me, those guns are going to swing a little bit better. I shoot them better. I'm 6 foot, 190 pounds, so I'm in decent enough shape that, you know, it's okay for me to carry these guns all day. They don't wear me out. And if I'm hunting late season, having to take longer shots, if it's not point and shoot, a 6 to 6.5 pound gun with 29-inch barrels is the way to go. Bead options, I'm just not big on fiber optics. I don't think they belong on an upland gun. Turkey guns, sure, because you're supposed to aim a turkey gun, but shotgunning is instinctive, and I think anything that potentially distracts your eye and your mind as you're swinging on a bird, where you should be solely focused on the bird or the clay or whatever you're trying to shoot, it just mentally just kind of just pulls a little bit of a distraction. So anything I can do to avoid that, I will. I have guns that don't have beads on them. I don't look at the bead, I'm looking at the bird. So my vote between, you know, white, brass, fiber optic, I'm probably a brass bead guy, and these guns that do have beads have a brass bead. Grip type, I think it's pretty clear what I'm into. A Prince of Wales or an English stock grip. They carry really nice in the field. They're comfortable to have on your shoulder or in your hand carrying for long periods of time. They're very quick to shoulder, and for me, they've worked out fantastic. I think a pistol grip is great in the target discipline, but in my opinion, in the field, I very much prefer one of these two choices. The final thing to talk about in this little summary is the recoil pad. Whether that's rubber, polymer, hard plastic, whatever that might be, at the end of the day, it's most important that the gun's length of pull fits you. Any of those options will work. I will say that you have a higher chance of hanging up on clothing, shooting rubber, or some of the heavier padded type recoil pads. For that reason, late season, especially when I'm layering up and changing that length of pull right because my shoulder is essentially growing with the layers, I like having the hard plastic recoil pads, and that's an advantage of the shooting the 20 gauges or the 28s. These aren't shells that are beating me up, so I really don't need any type of padding for comfort for shooting, and it's a field gun. I don't notice the shots when they go off, so if it's gonna help me shoulder the gun quicker, if it's gonna make sure that I get a clean mount every single time, that's the direction that I'm gonna go. And I feel like these hard plastic Browning buttstocks are a fantastic choice, and you can outfit those really on any gun out there, so that would be my personal vote. Loading, if you like using double guns but you're hunting covey birds and maybe you missed your first shot, connected on your second, and they're still popcorning, I feel like ejectors give me a better opportunity to quickly reload, get back on the gun, and hopefully put another bird in the back. So ejectors have my vote. Overall, I feel like we've covered a handful of information. Hopefully it's been presented in a digestible form. Golly, I'm known to be long-winded, but wanted to share just some of the things that I've experienced over owning a lot of different guns in my life. I've sold all the guns that I don't like, and I own all the guns that I do like and that I shoot well. So these are the little nuggets that I've taken away. So if you're looking for a great field gun, I hope it's been helpful for you and points you in the right direction. Thanks so much for watching. Catch you on the next one.